Hello. Yes, this is what I've been doing over the past while. I haven't been feeling like drawing for a really long time. Like the past couple days, I've kind of just been like sleeping a lot, playing games occasionally, and watching YouTube videos. And then like earlier today, I got a sudden like crazy urge to just like draw stuff. And I'm not working right now, so I was like, okay, if there was ever a time to draw anything, now would be the time. But then it ended up being like 2 a.m. and I was like, well, I don't want to sleep. I can't sleep, actually. And I know some people are around during this time versus when I'm normally streaming, and I figured it might be fun to just like hang out while I am painfully awake, and just do some casual stuff, because so lately I've been feeling like, oh, I can't stream unless it's like the charity commission stuff. If I'm gonna stream, I have to do that kind of stuff, but I will be doing that tomorrow. So part of me was like, I could do something else for now, right? Hey Clutch, I'm doing good. It's been an interesting couple days. I feel like whenever I get a chance to like take a break, my kind of first inclination is kind of just to like let go. When I take a break, it's like, oh, I'm like sleeping in super late and I don't sleep very well, and I am, just kind of not drawing and not super motivated, and I don't feel super like, I don't know, I feel really like gross and lazy. So there are always times when I get like a sudden desire to rectify that, I guess. But it takes me a couple days to like want to change it. So yeah, now I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, I just need to like get myself into a framework of like, I have things I want to do, I just gotta push myself to do it. And for some reason it always happens really late at night. So here I am, really late at night, feeling particularly, I don't know, just like feeling slightly more prepared, I guess, to be doing stuff, but also in a state where I'm like, I really need to like remember enjoying art again, because the last couple days of me at my old workplace, or the last couple months, have been pretty rough. And the more I think about it, the more I realize how important it is for me to like actually be drawing my own things. I've started realizing how important drawing my own ideas is to me, to like stay happy and motivated. I guess I always thought I could just turn it off, but I noticed like just in a couple days of me actually being able to do my own thing, I was just so much happier. I was just so much more excited about everything. I was so much more just like happy. And I know some people are like, well, you could just start doing like Patreon stuff and do like all those other things, and I just don't think I'm a strong enough person with a strong enough discipline to do that kind of stuff. So I kind of have to play the game of enjoying working on teams and with people on their projects, and then also needing the time and space to do my own stuff. And I haven't really found a good balance for that. Sorry, I'm just like talking off the top of my head because even though I'm awake to draw, I'm not necessarily awake to like restrain the amount that I ramble. So, but anyways, so I started realizing that a lot more. And you know, in the past couple, in this week, I took a break from work, and it was a really hard time recovering from all of that feeling, like months and months of feeling like I don't know how to be happy. I don't know how to be happy about my work. I don't know how to be happy about my life and my goals and the way that I'm living. Because I'm just so caught up in like what I'm doing at work and just trying to like keep myself together that I really couldn't appreciate how much I missed drawing for no reason except because I wanted to. And then once I took a break, I was like, oh, perfect, now's my time, right? Now's my time to do all these things. And then I just didn't want to. I finally took, the time off, and I'm here taking a break. And I was like, I don't want to draw at all. So I was like, I'm gonna stick to my guns, and I'm not going to draw, right? I told people, like, don't draw if you don't want to, and I'm not gonna draw. So I didn't. And I mean, it was good. I needed the break for sure, but I just felt so guilty. I don't know, I told people, like, don't feel guilty. You have to take a break. It's normal. It's natural. But the advice you give to other people never applies to you. It's okay if other people take a break. It's not okay if you take a break. And so I felt insanely guilty, but also I didn't give a shit. I was so tired that I kind of didn't give a shit. And so I kind of fell into that. I fell into this weird, like, hole of just, I just don't want to do anything, and I don't want to think about anything, and I feel bad that I'm in this hole, and I want to be doing something productive with all this free time that I have. But I couldn't do it. I can get myself out of it, right? And then earlier today, my friend, my roommate actually, was like, hey, the school that I went to that I live nearby, has a gallery, and they recently started this exhibition for Sid Mead. And if you don't know who Sid Mead is, he's kind of like a premier sci-fi painter and illustrator, very much of like the era between like the 50s, early 2000s kind of futurist sci-fi thing, right? So he's had a major impact. He's like one of the greats. I'd say one of the modern masters. I never really cared about Sid Mead very much. Like, I thought he was cool, but he was kind of for the olds, But I went. Sorry if this music is not very like, it's not very soothing, but I kind of wanted to listen to Transistor stuff. But I never thought that Sid Mead was particularly like crazy cool. I thought he was cool, but I never really got into his stuff. But going to the actual gallery where you could see like originals, it was crazy how much. I mean, I was pretty enraptured. Like, I really liked the stuff that they had on display, because I think ultimately, like, Sid Mead has technical mastery, right? He's good at what he does, for sure. But he's also not, like, the most technically advanced artist I've ever seen. There are people that are so much better than him when it comes to conveying proper depth and atmosphere, but, like, does that matter for Sid Mead? It doesn't. Because the cool part about Sid Mead stuff is that he's inviting you to look at a future and a world that doesn't exist, but it captures your imagination in a way that is intoxicating. Like, you look at his future and you could see it, you could feel it, you could imagine what it's like to live in these scenes. And I think he's always been really good at that, because I mean, his scenes are crazy weird. They're not at all like functional, but something about them was incredibly inviting and incredibly hopeful for this kind of sort of what is it, art deco glory, to very humanist, very glory to mankind kind of feel, and I always thought that was very interesting. But seeing it in person earlier today was like, it was particularly impactful, I think, because it reminded me, like, this guy, he's done his fair share of work for movies, he's done his fair share of work for comics and everything like that, but it's the way that he finds tiny joy in everything that he does, because he needs it to keep working. Made me think a lot about like how I've been feeling lately. Made me think a lot about like how I've been sort of struggling to find a good reason to draw and how I've been so, I miss it, but I also kind of want to avoid it. And, you know, looking at his stuff, I was like, you know, this was a guy that lived his life and made his art in the way that he wanted, to the point where people were paying him and asking for him to work on their projects because it's Sid Mead. He wasn't just some artist that people wanted on their projects because he was, you know, looking for work and we need artists to do this thing. They asked him to be there, to work on their things, to be a part of their team, because they wanted Sid Mead to be on their team, because he was such a huge trailblazer of his own style, of his own taste, of his own ideas, that, you know, whatever Sid Mead made, you had to like it because it was Sid Mead doing the thing, and he could never disappoint because he was always true to himself. So it's like, I'm sitting here with my little dinky anime drawings, and I'm like, why couldn't I love my ideas half as much as he does? Like, why couldn't I live my life a little bit more true to what I want to make? And, you know, I've thought about that on and off, like, what do I want to make? And the answer to that is not necessarily as important as the idea of, like, I could choose to do that, and I kind of just needed, I think, a little push from an artist much greater than I to remind myself that, you know, the work that I've been so dissatisfied with in the past couple months, the work that I've been so kind of embarrassed about, or the work that I've been doing that I've just felt so worthless making, and I think in a way I felt that way because I knew it wasn't me. Man, Transistor is a little bit I forget how gritty it is sometimes. It's a little bit much for me right now. Sorry, we gotta set the mood. But I really like the Transistor roasting. Yeah, so, you know, all those thoughts happening, everything, all those things rolling around in my head. And tonight, this current juncture that we're at, I was like, you know, I finally have a little bit of energy, just the tiniest bit. And I was like, I have to take that. I have to, like, take it and run with it, even if it's like, you know, the tiniest whiff of motivation. I have to take it and run with it because I know it's gonna disappear as soon as I sit down and watch another YouTube video. So here I am. I'm like 3 hours deep into this weird, kind of like unplanned thing, which might sound weird to you guys because I never plan any of my stuff, but like, I've just been kind of making it up, and then I was just rendering because that's what I do when I stop trying to think about things too hard and I wanted to think about other stuff. And you know what? I was sitting here doing this for like 3 hours, and like, I didn't even know if this was gonna turn out very well. I didn't know if I was gonna like this at all. And I like it now. But, I wasn't sure at the beginning if I was gonna like it. And I think after 3 hours of me just, like, kind of noodling on this, and I was like, in a call with friends, and they were just talking, and I was just drawing, and I was like, maybe this is cool. Maybe I'm enjoying this. Maybe I'm having fun because I can't sleep anymore. Maybe it's worth staying up to explore this a little bit more. Maybe I can convince myself that, like, the art that I've been so insecure about for the past couple of months, maybe it's because I didn't really care about that kind of stuff. Maybe it was because I made them knowing I had to make them for someone else, having maybe not as much faith in a project or in the stuff that I was doing, and maybe I still have, like, something cool about my work that I can be proud of. So that's where I'm at currently, emotionally, physically, metaphysically, spiritually. I'm in this weird state of, like, I like it enough that I'm going to continue working on it. And maybe, once I'm done with it, I can look at it and be like, hey, I like this, and I'm proud of it, and I'm happy I did it, and maybe this is, like, an attempt at looking at what my art could be, not what other people's, or what I would like my art to be in terms of me judging it based on other people's stuff. Wait, no, there's a better way to phrase that. It's like, in this big, huge couple months worth of funk, I've been, like, looking at other artists and being like, oh, I wish I could have been a better artist. I wish I could have learned more. I wish I could have learned more skills. I wish I could have done that. I wish all my stuff when I drew them could have looked better. I wish, I wish when I drew something it didn't look the way that it did. And I see artists that I admire so much that it hurts, and I look at people that I wish I could be, and it makes me a jealous little sour lemon. And at a certain point, I'm like talking into my wall. I'm like looking at my wall and talking, because I can't have thoughts and also draw, but at the same time. But then I was, like, sitting there thinking, like, I don't even remember who I am. Like, I don't remember what I can do. I don't remember what I am capable of. All I know is what I'm not capable of. I only can see every day what I am unable to do, and it hurts. And it is frustrating, and it is paralyzing, because I'm afraid the next time I put pencil to paper, I'm gonna have to confront the fact that I am not the person I want to be, and yet at the same time I still don't know who I want to be. So here we are at an impasse, totally and utterly paralyzed by fear, and yet completely at a loss for what the answer would be. And that's how the last couple of months have been, in a way. Just feeling weird. Not necessarily stumped. I've still been working, but and I have small victories, but it's not necessarily in a way that I want. And I guess in a way today was sort of me trying to figure out if there was something in me that could come out, that I could look at and say, like, hey, I'm proud of that, and that could be me. That could be what my art looks like in a couple years, and I could be proud of the future version of my work that I'm working towards, because I don't know what it is. But maybe what I'm doing is not necessarily off-brand or in the wrong direction. Maybe I'm okay, and, like, I could look at these artists and be sad that I'm not doing the same stuff as them, but they're doing their own thing because that's what they've been doing their whole life, and I have a whole nother set of skills I've been working on, and just because I can't do what they do doesn't necessarily mean that I'm any less, any less worthy of being here. So I don't know. I think I've discovered that what I do in my free time is so much more of an indication of who I am than what I do for my job, which is like, of course that's how it is. Of course that's how it works. But there's a part of you that's like, I wish I could live through my job. I wish my, the whole thing about like, oh, if you love what you do for work, you'll never work a day in your life. Bullshit, okay? Bullshit. You'll not hate, but work is work. Work is a separation of from self. It's capitalism. It's all these things. Unless your work is literally doing your personal art, right? Like, it's not going to be who you are and what you do and what is most faithful to you. Because unless you do a very specific type of work, you're almost always doing someone else's story, making someone else's characters, trying to make someone else's project work. That's just how it is, and I like my job. But I think I'm someone who like desperately needs to be in my own space in order to feel like a person. And that's really hard to find the time to do, but the more I work, the more I realize how important that is for me, because I just suffer. I just suffer so hard when I feel like I haven't been able to explore my own ideas or have my own thoughts and my own, like tastes and stuff represented. And like, I don't think this would even happen, or I don't think this would even be resolved if I was the one leading projects. Like, I still think there's a separation of myself from the work that I do. And so in the months that I just didn't have the time to do any of my own work, I just forgot who I was. And now I'm here trying to remember desperately in like the couple weeks that I have to like have a break. Because as soon as I go back to work, I'm gonna forget. And then I'm gonna sit, trying not to look at my phone, trying to think about how, like, yeah, I feel like I have done a lot of work. I feel like I have made a lot of progress, but why can't I remember what I've been able to accomplish? I can't remember it ever. And so that's why we're here. I'm 4 hours deep into this. Probably longer. I don't know how long I've been working on it. And I'm kind of doing it brainlessly. I'm not really thinking too deep about anything, and that's why I'm rendering. That's why I'm shading, because shading is a whole lot of nothing for a good portion of it, and then suddenly it's like I have to think really hard about this clothing fold. But then you can stop thinking about it, because it's like, oh, I know what the form is. I don't have to necessarily think about each stroke, and then I get to have weird existential thoughts all over again. But here's me desperately trying to remember what's mine. What is something that I do because it's me and it's mine, and I make my work and I'm the brain behind this. So what is something that I can do, that I can be proud of, that I can say is something that I would feel comfortable saying is born from my own inspirations and my own influences. Not because someone else told me that this was the cool thing to do, that this was the skill that I needed, for just me. Because I don't remember. But I like to think that, as I'm working on this, maybe I do kind of remember. Maybe I do remember who I am in a little way. Maybe I do kind of still have a connection to the artist that I think I was going to become. Whenever I look at like old pencil drawings that I did in my sketchbook back in school, what kind of artist I thought I was going to be until I got sidetracked working all the time. I don't know. I think about her sometimes. I think about the version of me that, never ended up working, and I just rode that high that I was feeling in like some of the later months of school, and I was like really feeling my own work. I was like, I feel like I'm hitting something with these pencil sketches, and I feel like I'm hitting something with like these drawings, and suddenly I had to start working, and I was doing all this stuff, and then I was doing work for other people, and I was learning new styles and working in new genres, and then I'm like, I'm a year in, and I don't know if I'm making art for myself anymore, because I know it's for a job. I'm very comfortable with the fact that I make art for my job. But I don't know. It's been a thought that I've had for a while, a thought that has particularly reared its ugly head today. So here I am at, there's no music. Here I am at like 2:30 in the morning with all of you guys. Because I figured there's some people who never get to make it to the stream, and I'm awake. You're all awake. I might as well share this terribly existential moment with all of you. I've missed many a comment. Welcome, everyone, if you have been able to make it. Hello, welcome. It's like kind of cold in my room, but like not cold enough for me to put on a jacket, but like kind of too cold for my diaphragm to like stay still, so I'm like kind of shaking. The weird thing is, like, this is not the first time I've like thought about this. So it's kind of not like I forget, because I think about this quite often. I think about the work that I like the most that I've done, and I'm like, that's me, right? I think that's me. I think that's closer to who I want to be. But, it's at some point it's just kind of like, yeah, but like knowing that that's what it is doesn't make it feel any different. Like, I don't feel any. I feel melancholic and regretful and sad when I look at some of the work that I have adored, some of the work that I actually am proud of, because I'm like, where is that person gonna go? Who is that person gonna be by this point? And why am I not the person I think that person would have been? Like, why am I not the version of myself that I think I would be had I stuck with that trend, had I stuck and rode that wave? And why did the wave end, and why am I here, and at what point did I get off the train that I felt so good about being on? And that's the thing, because it's never like I feel like I don't think about this. But there are just some times when I feel like I really messed up. I feel like I really just kind of messed up with there's, how do I say this? I think there are just some times where I feel like I messed up my direction, and every time like I answer questions on stream, I'm always like, I hope to God I'm not messing someone else up with their direction, because sometimes, some days, you're on that train, and I feel like it's a train because you're just going and you're drawing and you're like, everything feels great, and I feel like I'm learning, or I feel like I'm really hitting something, and then before you know it, you see yourself and you're in this new place. you somehow got off the train. You don't know when, you don't know how, and you don't remember what made you get off, but you did. And now you're on this place with no road, no stop sign, no platform, no train station. You're just like in the middle of nowhere. And sometimes that's like, it's weird how it feels like that sometimes. And I think at some point when I was working, I got off the train, that I was really feeling maybe, I don't know, maybe in like March of last year. I've been off the train for a while, and like, I don't think I really had the time to confront the fact that I'm like terrified of what it means to be off the train. And I'm still missing the train that I think I should have been on, but it's long gone. Like, I'm not gonna be the person who would have stayed on that one route. Like, it's gone, it's long gone, it's still going. In another universe, I was still on that train, but I'm not now. Because apparently my brain can only think about it in, like, metaphors. But, or not similes, metaphors? Allegories? One of those. I think about it in that way, because it makes more sense to me, but, I'm not that person. I shouldn't miss that person. That person isn't me. I shouldn't miss whoever I wasn't ever going to be. Because then I'm just missing, I'm spending energy on someone who I don't know, who doesn't exist. But, doesn't necessarily stop you in the rare moments at night when, like, I sometimes dare to think about all the things I will never be. And I dare to think about all of the things I'll never accomplish, all of the styles that I wish I could have been good at, all of the things I wish I was better at drawing. But, I think ultimately at a certain point, a couple months, couple weeks, couple days, couple years later, I realize I don't miss them as much as I think I do. I'm sad I'm not the person I could have been. I look at these old works and I'm like, I think I am kind of sad that I'm not where I would have hoped to be, looking at these past works of mine that I'm proud of. But I can only really work with who I am today, as disappointing as that is. But it's okay. The conversation always comes back in a circle. I always get back to the same place where it's like, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, all these bad feelings don't matter. Because it's not bad feelings. Feeling sad for myself is not gonna get me to be better. It's not gonna get me to, pay my bills, or it's not gonna get me to a state that I'm actually happy with. Ultimately, it all ends in the same place where I'm just like, I just gotta get over this. I gotta keep going. Because there's so much more at the end of the tunnel, and I've quit before. I know what quitting's like. Quitting didn't do anything for me. So, nowhere to go but up. Didn't you like the path that took you here today? I don't think like is necessarily something I'd attribute to it. I don't regret it. I don't think I'd be the same person if the good and bad things didn't happen to me. And I like who I am, I think. I like who I've become, because I feel like every year that I get older, I'm a little bit more self-aware, a little bit more conscientious of the failings of my character flaws, and I know that if my life had been different, maybe I wouldn't be this self-aware. Maybe I wouldn't care about the same things. And I think the things that I do care about, I'm growing to admire more about myself and also feel more strongly about. So I don't think I regret who I am or how I got here. I think ultimately it'd be again a kind of fruitless exercise to hate or regret. But, you know, that doesn't stop me from sometimes thinking about what could have been. It's always a thought exercise that is tempting. Because it's like creating a fantasy. You're reconstructing a fantasy based on things that did happen to you. Like, sometimes, irresponsibly, I think about the version of me that could have been. Or the version of me that I invent, saying, you could have been that. When I probably wouldn't have. Go through 40 different timelines and I probably wouldn't be the person that I thought I could be. I'll look at an artist that I think is really cool, that I think is really proficient and amazing at what they do, and I'm like, I could have been that. It's like, what kind of egotistical part of my brain thinks I could have been that person? What part of my weird brain chemistry is trying to torture me over a version of myself that could have never probably existed? Because it's just foolish. Like, I didn't grow up that way. I didn't grow up to like the things that they liked in order to get them to where they're at now. So what foolish part of my brain is trying to force me to feel bad about a version of me that was never going to exist in this timeline? I don't know. It might be confusing to other people, but I try not to regret. I'm trying to regret less things. As I get older, I'm trying to find more things to just, like, be okay with. And I found that the more I think about things in terms of regret, the less willing I am to, like, pick myself back up again. I can't regret the bad things, because without them, I wouldn't have a better grasp on, you know, the day-to-day things that I really respect and enjoy, and without lessons learned, I don't hold myself accountable. Without the tough situations that I can't, that I struggle to move on from. For every situation that doesn't happen, I have one less reason to try and be a better person. So, I think I like who I am right now. I'm learning to like who I am. I think I'm a much improved version from myself of years ago. And I can only hope that at a certain point, I'll also start to love what my art is becoming. I hope I'll also start to recognize, like, what it is about my work that I can be confident in knowing that it's consistent. I can be confident in knowing that this is my stuff, mine. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting how easily swayed I am, which is why, right? Which is why, you know, whenever people are like, how do you solve, you know, all of these emotional problems when it comes to, like, art and stuff? And I'm like, what do I say? Well, my response is usually just, like, avoidance. Avoidance is the best policy. Like, don't look at the artists that make you feel bad. Don't look at all these places that make you feel worse. Don't think about it. Don't do that. Because it's so much easier to kind of move forward in my brain when it's like, I can't think about those things. I gotta look forward. I gotta keep going forward. But, you know, sometimes it's kind of, I don't know, in a weird way, a part of my brain's like, hey, maybe thinking about these things is actually good for my brain. Like, torturing myself with this stuff is actually good for my brain, because then I can challenge myself when I have these gut reactions to people's work, being like when jealousy turns into this kind of like simmering rage, or when like adoration turns to spite, turns to guilt, turns to self-loathing. It's like I can challenge that the more that I kind of interact with it and be like, why does this make me feel this way? Why do I feel so like upset by X thing or whatever? The more I can challenge myself on things that I don't outwardly agree with, maybe I'll have a better handle on future situations where I'm like, hey, I could treat myself better, or I could handle this better. But oftentimes just kind of ends up being like, I'll feel bad about my work, like always, every day. But it's okay. I think the older I get, the less catastrophic bad art kind of makes me feel. Because I'm a little bit more like, oh, well, today just didn't work out, right? It's always tomorrow. I'll just try better, try harder, try different things tomorrow. And tomorrow is not always tomorrow. Sometimes tomorrow is a couple months from then, but it's always comforted me to think about reality sort of like a wave, right? It always comes back around. It might be a small comeback around, but it always does. So if I'm feeling bad, that means everything has to go up at some point. I'll be fine. I don't know. I think social media has enriched people in ways that could have never happened before. Like, social media in a way has given artists from disenfranchised, positions in life an opportunity to maybe even have a chance at making a ripple somewhere else that they couldn't if they were, it was more geographically decided. I think in a way social media it's a double-edged sword, of course, everyone knows that, but the way that it's a double-edged sword is more so that I don't think people, especially when you're a kid, like, you don't know how to deal with social media in a way that is responsible. Like, I don't think any of us really learned that social media, it isn't catered to us. It's not given to us in a way that's digestible. It's a fire hose. It's always been. It's a garden hose. It's just a stream of water. It's a waterfall of information, of thoughts, of feelings, of vitriol, of news, of information, and we have to drip feed ourselves. We have to turn the faucet and make sure that we're not overloading ourselves, but we don't learn to do that because that's kind of a part of media literacy. It's a part of learning how to deal with an interconnected society, but we don't do that. I didn't do that with art. Like, I spent every day, all day, just scrolling through my feeds that were all just, I only followed artists ever, and I still do, and it's just like, oh, so much new art coming in and out every single day. It was overwhelming. But I was like, I have to know what all my favorite artists are posting. I have to know what all these things are happening right now in this moment. And every new day there's a new art piece posted. Every day someone finishes something. Every day someone's starting something. And I consumed it all, because why wouldn't I? But, you know, at some point it's like, I literally can't contain all of this information that's happening right now. And that's kind of why I started talking about, you know, people who've been in the streams will notice, like, I started mentioning something about taking in other people's goals and aspirations and dreams and supplementing your own with those things, right? Because I noticed myself doing that. I noticed that I would look at these people's works, I'd look at these people's art, and I'd be like, they're trying so hard to, like, achieve this look. And I want my art to look like theirs, so I should try really hard to do the same thing. Because I want to be them so bad, I want to be such a better artist, but there are literally so many people, so many artists nowadays that, you know, history doesn't even encompass the amount of artists that were working at the same time. But, like, this time we don't have the benefit of, like, art history only being about, like, the 5 people per era. It's thousands and millions of artists all being on the same platform, all kind of sharing the same stuff, and you don't get everyone's work on your feed. You get the thousands of people you follow, though. And that's still way more than you ever really had to learn beforehand. Knowing even a couple artists is a lot, and we don't even get the benefit of, like, missing their stuff. If we follow them, we see everything that they post, for the most part, right? Algorithm aside. So, I don't know. It's like, in a way, I think I'm so much more enriched because I don't get to hide away in my little privileged hole of, like, oh, I can just look at Western artists and I can just do this or whatever. I have to face the fact that, you know, I'm in the United States. I was able to get an arts education. And I'm now working in an industry that, for the most part, is relatively stable. And the work that I make could just be a derivative of the work that everyone's been making here. And we could all just be derivatives of each other, making the same stuff, working on the same styles. Games could be homogenized to the point where it's not recognizable what one thing is from another. Everything is just a copy of the same person. Like, we could live that way. Or, you know, and I feel like this is something that is best kind of explained through, or at least something that I thought was always very interesting was, like, some of the most favored games, some of the most influential titles that have ever come out in our memory are from other countries. But they're lauded in the West, which for a lot of people is the core of where the games industry is focused on, right? Where, like, the West is one of the few places that actually has a functioning, populated games industry. It's not like other places don't, but they don't necessarily have internal competition with each other. It's usually a couple standout studios with a lot of funding and then mostly smaller developers. But the West has a huge smattering of studios all across the country, right? We're the one that hosts the Game Awards, as much as that matters. We're the one with all the, like, companies that have, you know, affect a lot of people. But a lot of the most important games in a lot of people's childhoods come from other countries, primarily Japan. And how many games would we have? How many of the games that we love today exist without knowing what kind of work is happening on the other side of the ocean? I'd argue the vast majority of the games that we love today wouldn't exist without the inventions made by foreign artists, people with such different upbringings, people with such different flavors. A lot of the artists today would probably not be the same if they didn't watch a Ghibli movie when they were younger, or they, you know, didn't grow up with French animation, or they didn't read French comics or Italian comics. Like we don't, or like just the amount of artists that were immigrants coming into America who raised a generation on their work. It's like, to not be interconnected, I think would have led us down a very different path. And we are so much more... I think we benefited so much more from this kind of globalized version of art. But on an individual basis, do we have the mental maturity to treat that and also juggle responsibility to our own health, to our own creative fulfillment, to our own needs as artists? I don't think a lot of people do. I know I certainly didn't. Being a little child when I started going on the internet, I didn't know what it meant to not connect myself to these arts and all of these artists and feel like they're so far away, because they're not. They're my age. They're people that I could have met and seen and been drawing with. And so social media doesn't feel nearly as out of reach for some people, and that kind of lack of distance changes how we perceive or how we take on other people's thoughts and kind of goals in life, and we start thinking oh, maybe I should do that. It's just, everything's just so much more concentrated, so much more in your face. Peach, why are you trying to leave, huh? You stay here. My cat's trying to break out of my room. Would you say that our industry now is more biased towards incestuous in terms of art, like the game example you're giving? No, I don't think so. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a developer that has only ever been inspired by their country's work, right? But I do think that there is a level of business practice that doesn't really see the value in paying for creative diversity. There's no incentive for a business to divert from what has already been successful. To not feel that way is kind of being a super risky business person, and big companies aren't made by constantly making risky decisions. They make one risky decision by launching a company, and then they play it safe. They guard their hoard in a lot of cases. Which is why, once one big thing comes out and is really cool and is really successful, there's a ton of people that copy that exact same thing. And it's not necessarily I don't know. It's just how it is, right? I will say it's not the most heartening thing. But I get it. I get why it is. I think that's why it's important for artists, especially students, walking into the games industry and other industries, that they bring in new influences, that they're kind of raising themselves on other artists that aren't just people working in their field. The amount of game students that I've met whose only influences are people on the League of Legends Splash team, concept artists from their favorite games, or just playing their own favorite games, or art influencers on social media. It's those are the only people that they look at. If the only artists you ever look at are people that you can find on Instagram and Twitter, you're doing it wrong. You should be looking at artists whose work you can only find in books. You should be trying to find artists that really speak to you in all eras of art, in all genres of art, and on all professional or professions and disciplines of art, because that's the only way you're ever really going to escape the cycle of repeating things that other people have kind of already tested. Like, yeah, you could make splash arts that look exactly like the splashes on League of Legends, but at what point is that just kind of how Splash is made? At what point is that just kind of how that works, and there's no invention and there's no push because everyone's just kind of copying each other? And what if you could throw a wrench in that? Something new, something cool and interesting. And, you know, change how people interpret what art could look like for promotional material. That's all it is. It's just an art that is a piece of illustration used for promotional material. I recently, so I don't know how far I'm gonna get into this game, but I recently picked up Disco Elysium, and my god, that game is gorgeous. I don't know if I'll actually be able to play the game. It honestly gives me such an insane amount of existential dread, and I don't think I can actually make it through, but honestly, just like looking at the art for that game fills me with so much hope. Because very rarely have I ever found, it's very rare nowadays to find a game that is so dedicated to its own art direction that you look at it and you feel like it's a full product, you know? Like, it's not very common, because a lot of people's concerns nowadays, especially with like more mainstream games, is trying to make sure it's marketable to everyone, and everyone can kind of feel like it's, no one likes it, but it's inoffensive, right? That's the motto, right? No one's offended by it, but no one loves it. That's the safe spot, the gray zone in between everything. Disco Elysium, it's on Steam and a bunch of other consoles as well, I think, coming soon. But Disco Elysium does something really special. It does something abstract and textured and really unsettling. And it makes sense for the game, right? It makes sense for what this game is about. And it's kind of freaky and it's kind of shocking, but when this game bled it bled a direction, it bled a vision, and I don't know if that was kind of what it was always meant to be or if it changed, but regardless, the final product is something that doesn't deviate from itself. It felt like it should have been. It felt exactly like it should be to match the kind of game it ended up being. I remember sitting there when I opened like just the first screen, and I was like, it is so incredibly refreshing to see a game made by an artist that I don't think was inspired by games. It wasn't inspired by games. It was inspired by, you know, forms of, like, eras of abstract art, eras of contemporary art, inspired by what I would assume something akin to German Expressionism. It's inspired by that kind of existential dread found in artists who lived through war, and it's got the feeling and the history and the lineage of those eras. It's not just game art, it's more than that. It's actual art that transcends the commercial aspect of it and becomes something more of an expression, and it's cool, and it was fun, and it was great. I don't think I'm gonna be able to play the game, but it was great regardless to see it there. But anyways, I don't really actually know where that whole train of thought was coming from. Incestuousness. There's an element. I don't think it's necessarily as strict as some people might think it is, but it is there, and I worry about it, and I think about it, and I think that's why it's up to every artist individually as a responsibility to the industry they join, that we all have a part to play in pushing our industries forward, right? And if that just means diversifying our own journeys, diversifying the ways and the things that we learn from other people, any small way to bring something new to the table to possibly encourage a new way of thinking, the limits of what the limits of this industry could be. Like, because for some people, games, it doesn't matter what they look like as long as you can play it, right? But that's not the same for me. I see a game that I can play but can't enjoy looking at, and it hurts, it ruins it for me. Because I want to believe that games can be kind of an intersection of multiple things. And for a lot of people, a shitty game still plays well. So why does it matter? But imagine if a game could play well and invite you to dream of a time in which games are exciting to look at. What if you could play a really well-made game, but then also feel enriched by the new ideas it brings to the table? What if you could sit there and play a game that's well-made and then also feel like that little tickle in your brain that's like, oh, is that why it looks like that? Does it link to a bunch of other things? That's actually kind of cool. And what if that unlocks a part of you that suddenly is so much more interested in a new genre of something, whether or not that be lore or history or even like sociology or even costume design, because that's what it was like for me. Like, I remember the day that I got really into costume was the day that I watched the Lord of the Rings behind the scenes for the first time. And I remember I was watching one of the episodes that had the costume designers explaining how they were designing the costumes for the elves. And I remember her picking up the hem and like the inside of the collar. And she was showing us like all these embroideries that were happening in there. And like, you never see that in the film. And she says it, like, you don't see these in the film. But what they had done was and because it was an actual language, they could actually make words out of it. They wrote prayers and charms in the embroidery on the hem of all of these elven cloaks. It's such an extraneous detail. It's such an unnecessary time spent. It's such an unnecessary thing that they took the time to do, and it means so much. It blew my mind because I was like, of course they would. Why wouldn't they? That makes so much sense. When you send someone you love off to war, you want to make sure they're safe. And if a culture is predicated on the idea of, you know, magic or protection or looking for protection from gods, it's like, of course they would do that. No one watching the film was gonna care. But I suddenly realized that I cared. I suddenly realized that I loved the idea of caring. And if I hadn't seen that, if they hadn't done that, if that hadn't happened, maybe I wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't think about costume and wouldn't be as excited because I wouldn't know what it could have been, and it's such an intersection of so many things I do kind of care about. So what if, what if someone's playing a game for the first time, they're a kid or they're a young adult or they're an actual adult, and they play a game and it invites them to think of something cooler. It invites them to live in a world that's taken care of by someone who does care. And they suddenly realize that they care too. Suddenly they realize that, hey, this thing that I didn't think was all that interesting, it's somewhere in the back of my brain actually clicked for me. And that's how new people are born. That's how new tastes are born. That's how new individuals with a drive and a passion and an individual taste for whatever could come in and change how an industry puts care into something. It could change how all of us approach, a genre, a story, a medium. It could have a generation care a little bit more about the quality of a game, about the quality of a product, about the quality of a story. You could raise a generation of storytellers because the stories that you gave them were rich and well planned and ask them to empathize and be empathetic people. That the things that you could do if only more people believed in the same thing, believed in the value of the same thing. And that's the thing that really stops most things, right? Like, a lot of people complain, like, oh, you know, the developers they probably don't know their own game, or they probably don't care. 99.9% of the time they do care. They sorely care. They care way more than you ever could. They often are in a position where they don't get to make all the decisions. And I think a lot of gamers nowadays are a little bit more privy to that. They're a little bit more like, I blame management, not the developers. But at the same time, it doesn't matter that you say that. Ultimately, it does come down to them, because they're in this cross-section of being between a hard place and a rock and a hard place. And who has to bear the brunt of the fact that they couldn't make something cool happen, that they were forced to do a project that failed to challenge any convention, and they have to carry that from the next game to the next project to the next company. So the more that people in all levels care about this kind of stuff, I think in general, the more maybe the industry as a whole will value the impact of good ideas, the impact of new ideas. I'd like to think that that'd be the case, but I'm also not a veteran. I'm also not someone who's been in all these spaces, and I don't know when or how or why certain things happen, and I'm sure I'll learn. I'm sure I'll learn very soon. Why change is so difficult to make happen. But I don't know. That's why on a smaller scale, I always tell students, I always tell artists, like, you have to try to push yourself to be more than a derivative of the people that you follow online. You have to push yourself to be better than that. Because we've got plenty of them. That artist that you like, we've got that person. We don't need another version of them. What we need is a culmination of that person and 15 other different artists and someone with a totally different life experience and a totally different taste and appreciation for, you know, a host of different things. That's the valuable part. You're the valuable part. Not the fact that you can draw like league artists that are currently working at the company, but that you could potentially be someone who brings something new to a pre-existing company. That's the value of new students and new blood and new people coming into industries. It's that they could be the ones that help shake up what currently exists. They could be... Whoa. Why did that person scream? That like totally broke my train of thought. But like, they could be like students and new people coming in, and people like you guys could be what pushes everyone else towards something, you know, whatever you care about. Inclusive. Could be something more exciting. Could be something more daring or quirky or funky or interesting or, you know, whatever. More experimentation. Any of those things. Whatever you care about. That's what each new student represents. The potential for something new. That's what each new gamer, new film watcher, new reader brings to everything. Is an appetite for something new. And by not trying to raise yourself on a host of new artists from different places, you are kind of letting go of your part in this bigger fight for, you know, games as a medium to move forward from what it's always been. It's not just stories anymore, it's experiences, it's lessons to learn, it's ways to apply those lessons to your real life. They're new stories to tell, stories from people that have never been heard from before. But because we're all content to be not offended by something, or we're all content to be just disappointed as opposed to, you know, radicalized towards one opinion or the other, or because we're okay with what we currently get, it's not really gonna change, right? Anyways, at one point that had a point, but not anymore. There's a question at some point that someone asked, and I hope you don't mind me asking a question, but I wonder, is game art a good course to take if you want a career as a concept artist? I think so. I think it's tough to be a concept artist without having it being very intrinsically, if you want to work in games, that is. It's hard to be a concept artist without really understanding, like, what aspect, like, what field of concept art you're going into. Because concept art for film, concept art for animation, concept art for games is very different stuff, right? I think game art, if you want to get into games, it's good to be there because they'll teach you about how games are made. They'll teach you about the pipeline. And the pipeline is very important because we are, in the games industry, cogs on a wheel, cogs on a machine, right? We are bits and pieces that make up a whole. We are the sum of all of our parts, not just one person doing one thing, you know, having that affect everyone else. Everyone has a part to play, and in order to know how that works, you have to work with other people, and game art majors, I think, might give you a chance at knowing that more, knowing that better. I will say a lot of game art majors don't necessarily focus on the art aspect, they more focus on how it applies to everything else. So if there's a chance for you to still also be taking classes or just in your own time working on the actual technical stuff, some art courses are far more about game design than they are about game art, unfortunately. It's a good thing to learn, but for an artist, a concept artist, you have to kind of also be focusing on the technical stuff. So yes, I think game art courses are pretty important to take because that's not stuff you'll learn just normally. You can learn art anywhere. You can't learn the intricacies of game art or game design and game pipeline kind of outside of game courses, I guess. So I'd say yes. Do you think working in our industry has influenced your art? The art you've been mentioning, like independent of opinions and styles. Yeah, I mean, it's changed who I look at, for sure, sometimes, but, I mean, there is a host of skills I've had to learn because I work in this industry, host of skills that I have to continue to develop and continue to work on because I feel like I have to stay kind of current and relevant in my job, and they're not skills I loathe to learn. I enjoy learning new skills. But the fact of the matter is that there are new skills nonetheless, and that changes how I draw, that changes the stuff that I draw, and I think that's just how it works, right? You'll always be affected by the stuff that you do every day, and if you're working a normal job every day, then yes, you're absolutely going to be affected by it. And it does kind of contribute to the feeling that I was expressing earlier of, like, I don't remember who I am, I don't remember what's mine, what is my thing that I do, because I had to unlearn some of those things in order to do my job better. It's just kind of a push and pull, right? It's kind of why when you look at some concept artists and stuff, like, a lot of them get into fitness, some of them get into, like, other hobbies, some of them do, like, pretty big personal projects on their own. It's because, like, they're constantly having to rediscover their own self. Because when you're working, you don't get the chance to develop yourself very often. And something I wish a lot more companies would kind of encourage is to have their artists be doing, like, personal growth more often. I think actually having company time dedicated to keeping artists like creatively afloat is time well spent, because when like artists, creatives in general, are a lot more fickle than technical minded people. If their engine stops, if creative people's engines stop, like that's a full stop, right? Engineers, they can kind of coast, they know what they're doing for the most part, they can kind of keep going for it, because I don't think a lot of people tend to put self-worth and personal sweat and tears into the product as much as artists do. And so when an artist falls apart, falls off the wheel, falls off the train, the whole thing falls apart. And that's not to belittle like what the work that engineers do, but it's just something that I've noticed in my experience, is just that artists tend to go first in the burnout. And that's because there's like a whole different side to it that they care about, a whole different thing that it asks of them to participate in game pipelines and development and stuff like that. So it's definitely changed my stuff. It's definitely changed who I am. Whether or not that's good or not, I don't really know, but it's definitely something I have to be wary about, for sure. Okay, sorry, I'm catching up. I mean, some of the best concept artists were never game art people. Because a lot of them had to transfer from other industries to work in games. So a lot of the best artists nowadays are from comics, or they're from animation, or they were doing editorial stuff, and they kind of got into doing games because, you know, ultimately games need art, and any artist can do something if they're asked to do it, for the most part. And so ask an artist to do a character design for a thing, they do it. If they're, you know, good at fulfilling a task, they'll do it, and it's good, and they keep getting jobs. And it's like, that's how a lot of people transitioned into making art for games before. But now a lot more colleges are starting to offer game art as a legitimate course to get into when you go to college. And that's changed how a lot of people nowadays view game art. Now it's something you can train for. I think the skills are worth differentiating from other things, but, you know, that wasn't how it used to be. And now there's a whole nother problem. So all these artists, all these new artists are now coming in with the same skill set. They're coming in with the same thoughts and ideas about like what concept art should look like. It's the main problem I had with Feng Zhu's school was that all of them came out drawing like Feng Zhu, which is fine. Like, what he does is great, right? No one's gonna argue with that. Feng Zhu's a master at what he does. But when a school homogenizes its own students, right, that's just filling the pool with derivatives of each other. And that's fine because they can get the job done. But at what point do we start feeling like maybe it's a benefit when the pool diversifies itself? Like, when do we start to get the feeling that having all these artists train because there's only one version of this thing that they think is right, only one version of concept that they think is real, at what point does that become a problem for all of us? Because suddenly there are less and less people with the capacity to understand that maybe their personal interests, their personal tastes in art could come out a little bit more, that they could potentially make a name for themselves doing a very specific type of art. Art that they want to do. Art that they should be able to make. It's my fear with students, because I saw it when I was in school. I saw how people who got into games, because I didn't come into this really caring about games, which a lot of people gave me flack for, because they were like, why are you working in games when you don't play games? And, well, because I thought games was like the neatest intersection for me to start working in, and it is. And I like games now. I play more often, but I came in this more of an illustrator than anything. But a lot of my friends, a lot of my like classmates were big into games, right? And that's cool, that's fine. But like they were big into like some of the more popular games, some of them. And what ended up happening was that the only type of art they looked at were people that did the job that they were training for. They only looked at artists that already had the job title that was in the major that they were in. Concept artists only looking at concept artists. When in reality, there's a benefit to just kind of training to be an artist and then also knowing the specialization that you're going into. But there's not enough time really in arts education to do both. To train someone as an artist and then to also train them as a professional in this specific field. So they have to merge the two. It's not ideal for anyone, and schools are not necessarily terrible places for doing so, but it's just unfortunate that when someone goes in to learn concept, they don't necessarily come out as a good artist. But they get the concept of concept. They get the idea of designing things and stuff, but like that's a skill so intrinsically tied with a technical skill as well. So it's just kind of like a bunch of things kind of meshing on top of each other. And I worry sometimes when I see kids that are like, I want to become a concept artist because I was really into this game, or I want to work at this company. It's like, regardless of where you want to work, you still have to first and foremost be an artist. Concept is a specialization. You can learn that, or you can learn a bunch of other things to specialize in. But like, first and foremost, what I would love for people to do is to be an artist first. But that's tough to do when you're still kind of learning your place in it. And a lot of people, they just kind of want to work in places that, had a big impact on them and had, been a huge part of their life, which is totally fine. I think artists in general have a responsibility to be more than their influences, to learn and constantly be learning. But you kind of have to want to do that. You kind of have to understand the value in that in order to really appreciate it. And I can only hope that more and more people will understand the value of it in the future. Is there a way to get your sketch brushes? I'm currently using an artist called Jen Classens. I don't really know his name. Let's see. On his store are his pencil brushes, so you can look at that if you would like his brushes, but I also have my own sketch brushes that I sell on Gumroad, but if you are a sub, you can get them for free. How do you train your creativity or imagination? Honestly, it's about intaking a variety of content, right? It's about looking at content in media from all sorts of different industries, all sorts of different eras, all sorts of different styles. The more that you intake, the more you'll be able to output. That's the general basis of it, right? So, I get a lot of my input when it comes to games from my friends. My partner and my best friend are like, they're really good at just kind of like bringing out new, old, interesting films and games and all that kind of stuff, and it enriches me because I can look at all these different types of media that I didn't grow up with, and I can be like, oh, okay, cool. Like I can watch this film. I could, is there music playing? There you go. I could watch this film, I could look at this game, I could, look at these things, and I could increase my influence, because I primarily look at fine artists and like actual just artists versus applied arts, I guess. So my influences are often much more illustrative versus functional, and for them there's an excitement in the medium that I don't really have naturally. And so for me, being able to talk with them about like their favorite things and ask them questions about different types of games and like games history and different eras of genres and stuff like that, it makes me a better concept artist, because then I can take that knowledge and I can talk to other people who grew up with that same stuff, and I can then talk with them on the same level and bring in games and medium and movies that they hadn't seen before but now I knew, and I could be like, oh yeah, I can share that interest and fascination with new things. If you find yourself constantly at a loss for ideas, at a loss for styles, at a loss for inspiration, you might just not be intaking enough new stuff that your brain is sort of just like, I'm empty. I've done everything. I've tried all these things. I'm bored. And it's tough to kind of get into new stuff, especially if you haven't really been pushing yourself to do so, but it's kind of like my favorite thing is Pinterest, Reddit. Funnily enough, Reddit's really good for just kind of scrolling through and like looking at what other people are interested in. Like, my favorite subreddit is Ask Reddit, because sometimes people just ask like weird questions and then you get to read people's life stories, and it's really cool because people do some pretty crazy new stuff, things that I never really knew about, and I can then reinform like my worldview based on their experiences, based on their stories. I watch YouTube videos about world in general. Like, I watch a lot of video essays. I watch videos made by creators from different places than me. I try to like challenge my own beliefs. I try to challenge my way of thinking. I try to read up on philosophy. I look at art restoration, art history, archaeology. I look at costume history, fashion history. I look at sociology, philosophy. I watch videos on like game video essays talking about like the impact certain games have made across a generation, or the I watch gameplay videos, but then I also watch like what are kind of the outward reception of games and what changed them, and what are the theories as to why something succeeded versus why something didn't succeed, in literature, in sociopolitical events, in games, in movies. All of those things will mesh together to inform my ideas, inform how I value good ideas and what I value in terms of things with potential versus things that I think are still struggling to have a good hook, a good core soul to them. The more that I grow up and I try to engage with new things, the easier it is for me to come up with ideas, because my experience with the world is so much more vast. Yeah. I have insomnia, so I'm just drawing because I figured I would try it, because I know there's some people that kind of can't make it to the normal streams, so because I am painfully awake, I figured I would be productive, and I was already drawing, so it worked out. You know, honestly, like, social media is not a bad place to start. I follow a lot of people that post bits of fashion history. I look at. I really hate these accounts, but sometimes I feel okay when the artist is dead versus when the artist is still alive. So I always follow the old fine art reposter accounts because I'm like, all right, well, this person can't feel bad about it, so I don't feel bad about it when they repost the art of someone who has been dead for hundreds and hundreds of years, which is a weird thing. But sometimes I'll look at like old fine art reposter accounts, and they'll post like a bunch of artists that, like, some of them I know. You know, everyone knows about Andrew Zorn, everyone knows about Sargent, and everyone knows about Lion Decker, but like sometimes they'll post like a cool oil painter that I hadn't seen before, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And so I'll look at their whole, you know, like, not discography, whatever the equivalent for artists, whatever that is. Why is this song so soft? I don't know. And I'll just look at all their stuff, and I'm like, wow, this is like amazing. They have like techniques I've never seen. They have like a sense for color that I've never seen. This is like amazing atmosphere and stuff like that. So sometimes those accounts are actually pretty useful. I try to avoid looking at the ones that are reposting just like normal artists that are currently alive today. Tumblr was always really nice for finding new art. As well. There are museums that have online galleries that you could check out. Let's see. Honestly, I just find like artists from all of those places. Like, sometimes I'll watch YouTube videos and they'll have like an artist or a piece of artwork that's like in their video essay. I'm like, oh, that's really cool, and I try to find it. Sometimes I'll just be looking through art books and I'll find an artist whose work I really liked in it, and I'm like, oh, cool. And then I'll look up their personal stuff, and I'm like, oh wait, this person follows like interesting people as well. And then I'll look at their work and I go down this rabbit hole, and it's, you know, a big thing. Sometimes I'll just go through and look at pieces that someone else has liked. I'll look at ArtStation, I'll look at Twitter, I'll look at Instagram, I'll look at YouTube, I'll look at Pinterest. There's a lot of different places. It does take a little bit of searching, for sure. I really need to look into more Italian comic artists. I feel like I haven't really read too many of their works, and I would love to collect more of their work. Italian and French comic artists are insane. A library close to me actually imports a lot of those, and I wanna go through their shelves again because their stuff is incredible. I haven't actually read any of his stuff, and I want to really badly. But wait, what was his Instagram again? Matteo, was he? I think he's French, right? Matteo de... Is it Longy? Longy? I think, isn't he? Or is he of a different European? I'm not sure. Oh no, he's not French. There's a French artist that I follow though, is it not him? I'm thinking about someone else. Oh, I'm thinking of someone else. Oh, I don't remember their name. Sergio Tapia has been like one of my favorite artists for a really long time. But oh god, what's that? It's escaping me. It's almost 4 a.m. and it's escaping me. I'm really bad with names. I'm really bad at remembering artists. I'm not good at oh, there's Claire Wendling, right? I think she's French. I hope she's French. At one point I'll mention a French artist. I don't remember people's names, and it sucks because I wish I was better at it, because people who can, like, they'll pull names out and I'm just like trying to struggle to Google them all, because I have no room in my brain for any new information. Okay, cool. I think a lot of European artists use, like, they use Instagram more so than Japanese artists, or like Asian artists. Not to say they're not on Twitter. A lot of them still are. It's just that they also have both. I tend to find my European artists first on Instagram and then switch to Twitter. But that's where I found that most of them are. You ever look at your stuff and you're like, I've made a mistake? I wanted to stop rendering this like ages ago, and then I was like, oh no, but like I should like push myself to finish, because I started a bunch of these like pencil sketches looking pieces, and I'm like, oh, I never want to finish them though, and I'm like, no, I have to finish one of them at least. God help me. Because I'm always just like, no, I don't want to do it. Because I'm lazy. I have to. One of these days I have to. Honestly, I just kind of started drawing the hood shape. Like, I think I started with something like, because I like hoods a lot, so I think I just started with like a, what was it? It was like, I think I started with that shape. I was just like drawing something, whatever. And then I was like, oh, I could put like a face here. And then I was like, oh, well, I could put like more cloth here. I was like, oh, I could put like a shoulder here. And I was like, oh, I put another shoulder here. And then I was like, oh, well, I could have it open here and then do, and then I just kept going. And you know, because I am who I am, I like adding jewelry and embroidery and other things to a piece. So as soon as there's like an empty spot, I'm like, oh, I'll just throw like a necklace there or something, or a bead or whatever, because I don't like making things that are easy to draw again. It was also just kind of like a meditation piece. I tend to do these when I have either a lack of desire to think, or if I want to think about something but need to keep my hands busy, then I'll do something like this. In the case of today, I was like, I don't want to think. I wish only to draw. And so I just started shading. Because it is simultaneously both extremely brainless and also extremely brain heavy. A lot of brain going into it. Because randomly I'll have to like stop and be like, is this actually the shape that I want? Do I want the shadow to go this way? What's the curvature of this cloth? Am I going in the right direction? Do I want this to be, you know, this dark, this light? Oh, it's so far away now. Do I want it to be this dark, this light? Do I want to have it like gradiate? I have to think about all those things. But then also I'm like, haha, just color it in. The dichotomy of man. Haha, when I move my pencil this way, it colors. Do it more. It's just where my brain's at now. Honestly, I haven't really thought about printing any of my stuff recently, but I might. I have been interested in the last couple years, honestly. Like every year I'm like, I'm gonna think about putting up a shop or something, and then I just never get to it. But I've been interested in doing like sort of a print shop. I just don't feel like I ever finish enough things to make a print shop out of it. So I've never really put that plan into motion, but a part of me does kind of want to do it. I just feel like I don't make enough finished pieces regularly enough to like really do all those, what everyone else does where they like do shop updates and things, but I don't know. Does this make sense? No. Do I like it? Maybe. Am I gonna hate finishing it? Absolutely. Do I like it? Maybe it's too sharp. Maybe it's too much. Do I like it? Is it nice? Maybe. Maybe this should be. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll keep it like that. Common question, but what do you think is a healthy amount of time for someone to spend drawing and just doing art? I think that as long as you take breaks, to, get a drink of water, to stand up and do all that kind of stuff, then, you could draw for as long as you want, right? That's what I did. I love drawing. I'd draw all the time if I could. If I wanted to, if I felt like it. But oftentimes, I think some people focus more on the time than they do on however long it takes for them to get what they need to get done. To do whatever they need to get done. That's the word. So I'd say as long as you're taking breaks and doing whatever you gotta do, then however long you feel like drawing. If you don't feel like drawing that day, don't draw. I finally felt like drawing for the first time in almost a week. Actually, tomorrow will be a full week since I last drew, so it took me 6 days to get back into drawing a little bit. And as soon as I do that first drawing, I always feel like the next ones happen a little bit easier. Do I draw in low or high brightness? Higher, I assume, I think. What types of books do I enjoy? For like normal reading, I tend to read fiction. I've always been much more interested in fiction, so lately I've been trying to push myself to read more nonfiction stuff. I have been working through a book called where is it? It's gone. Hi, Peach. Cool. A book called The Golden Thread: How Fabric Changed History. It's a really cool look into the different ways that fabric has shaped different societies, and I took a break from reading it because work got really busy, but I want to get back into reading it again because it was a really cool, from what I remember reading it a couple months ago, it was a really cool kind of dissection of how the practice of weaving might be, her stance is that the practice of weaving is actually the first and best invention of humankind. Of putting fabric, or creating fabric and thread as an invention, is one of the most influential inventions of human history. And she posits, the thought that so many societies are based on threads' interaction with the materials around them, and how their fabric have enabled them to do everything from, living healthy lives, hygienic lives, to helping them win wars, and the different technologies in which weaving has sort of revolutionized their different cultures, having a huge impact on their economy and their ability to trade with other people, and how it's so often overlooked for things like metal and machinery and things that developed in an era where weaving had already revolutionized that society. So it's an interesting read because she goes pretty in depth into like different ways that people create cloth, different ways that different textures of cloth can be created, and all the different formats and needs and stuff like that. It's kind of cool to think about it from more of like a world building perspective. Like if you were to structure a society off of, the various materials, how do you make sure that that material has an appropriate impact on that region? So I look at it from that way, and it's pretty cool, but I just haven't been able to read it very much. So I'm hoping that I can keep reading it. Okay, we're making progress. I'm trying to like resist the urge to be like, just go draw something new. I wanna finish it. I'm so close. I can do it. I still have stamina. I can do it. If it were just me, I probably would have stopped. But a part of me's like, no, I must finish. People are more satisfied with a finished thing, and I would be more satisfied with a finished thing. I always talk about how I don't have anything that I finished, but that's because I always give up. So here we are, struggling to the finish. I'm okay. Like, I'm definitely more tired than I was before, but I think in a way this is keeping me active. Although you can go to bed, and in fact you should go to bed. Yes, I will. Hello? Oh. Name other interesting books. I honestly haven't been reading very much. Ooh, what was it called? No, what was it called? Wait, hold on. Talk to Gary about it. Rage of Dragons. Rage of Dragons is a really cool book. I read it. It's by Evan Winter. It's a father who wrote this book for his son because he felt like his son didn't have enough role models with him as the protagonist. And so it's written as like an Afro fantasy. And it's really cool because it doesn't necessarily shy away from like the Western elements of fantasy. Like they still wear like gambesons and vambraces and stuff like that, but their society and stuff is all structured in a very different way. And the fact that there are no characters that aren't POC, it's cool. It's really well written. It's a fantastic fantasy book. And race doesn't necessarily play a huge part in it. They allude to facts that like race did have, you know, events have happened in the past, but the actual plot line itself is a lot more about, well, I don't know. I guess it's really up to you. Rage of Dragons is a fantastic book. It's really well written. It's written in a really empathetic way, and the character is complicated, complex. He's growing up, and he is a really good protagonist. Like, you actually feel like he earns what he achieves, which is very rare in protagonists nowadays. Coming more from like a perspective of like other male protagonists in other mediums, I feel like very rarely actually deserve what they achieve. And I'd say Rage of Dragons is one of the best stories I've read with the premise. And the premise is cool. Like, the world is sick. And I still need to read the other books. I'm hoping that I can drop down to the library one of these days and get the next books because they're really good. But I haven't really read a ton of other books, honestly. I don't know if Rage of Dragons if that's the same story. I don't think a game was made out of it, though. Yeah, it's a generic enough name that I would assume that probably someone else has also made something akin to it. No, I mean, I have the same thoughts. It's an incredibly generic name. But a very good story. So I sincerely recommend everyone try it out. If you go to this, I'm using his pencil brush. Yes, I'm still using Cintiq, and my comments are kind of the same. It's nice. Nothing's changed for me, though. Except I think this is a lot cleaner because I'm a lot more of a perfectionist on the Cintiq than I am using my other tablet. Which for some things is good, like for this kind of style, but for some other things like painting, not so much. Bye, Vanna. Thank you for coming. Sheldon. Any plans this upcoming weekend? Nothing concrete. Honestly, most of my weekends now are usually just me and Gary, like, we hang out, on Saturdays. We usually just get food, and then we go home and we play games, or, like, we watch a YouTube video, and then Sunday morning, he and I get coffee in the morning, and then he leaves, because we don't live together. That's usually how most of my weekends go. So, probably the same. I think it's mostly people that are either new or lurking because it's now finally their time zone. Well, I'm glad you guys can finally be a part of this, even if the cost was you having to listen to me have an existential crisis in the beginning of this. Happy that you all are here. Replace my need for soda with sparkling water? That's good. Honestly, sparkling water is really good. Like, alone. Like, not even with flavoring. I think sometimes sparkling water is just really nice. Sometimes you just need the carbonation, but you don't need the sugar. Thank you. Am I okay? Yes, I'm fine. I think this drawing is cementing that I'm fine. Honestly, the past couple months have been pretty rough, but I just need to tell my brain more often that I am alright. I'm cheating. Thank you. Do I know any good jokes? No. I'm only funny when I don't mean to be. Hello, thank you for the raid. Why didn't... Oh, I don't have my alerts set up. Oh, I need to set that up. Sorry, I like removed all my alerts. I need to set up new alerts to sounds. My Koroks are gone. But wow, thank you so much for the raid. I really appreciate it. I miss my Koroks. That's how I always knew whenever someone raided, was that my big Korok maracas would go on. How is your new computer treating you? Did you have a lot of work to do, a lot of work to transfer files? Oh, my computer's good. It's been really good. For some reason today it booted to a black screen, but I managed to get it back. Other than that, it's been just peachy. It's been good. A lot of work to transfer files? Not really. All of my files were on a separate hard drive, a portable hard drive that I had, because I was working on my work computer, so whenever I wanted to work on personal stuff or on other work, I'd have to work off of stuff off my hard drive as opposed to the computer itself. So I just got used to saving things off of the computer, and so transferring it was not that big of a deal, honestly. It's actually a little bit more of a harder transition to have to start working on like the C drive of my computer, because I was so used to not doing that. But I don't have like a separate hard drive. Yes, welcome to the secret stream. The one that was not shared anywhere except for on the Discord. Thank you, Snow. Oh my. Pukudi, Mio, thank you for the raid of an equal amount of people. Hello, thank you. Welcome to the stream. I'm sorry my normal stream alerts didn't go off. I haven't set them up yet. But just pretend that the Korok with the maracas from Breath of the Wild is welcoming you all to the stream. Welcome to the secret stream that is out of my normal hours, but because I had insomnia, we are now awake at 4 a.m. my time doing stuff. But yeah, welcome. Yes, I am using sketch brushes from an artist on ArtStation. He sells his brushes, I think it's called just like the pencil brush. It's his own version of them, and I've never really used them even though I've had them for a while, so I figured I'd give it a try. new PC. Yes, I am now able to draw and stream at the same time. And potentially play Risk of Rain at 60 FPS in the near future. How am I liking them so far? They're good. Honestly, when I first tried them, I wasn't very happy with them, so I never used them. But then, now that I've actually given them a fair shake, they're actually quite nice. Ever tried to do a piece in era but did it poorly? Quite a few. I mean, most historical things end up not being very historical and end up just taking a lot of creative liberties. What do I think is the worst? I don't know. I honestly can't think of anything off the top of my head. There are definitely, most of them are out there are pretty bad, but I think it's less about like historical accuracy and it's more like historical respect. Like if you are going to do like Elizabethan era styles, but you're not going to be faithful to like the looks and the materials of that era, you might as well try to evoke the emotion of the era. A lot of people say that the Elizabeth movie that what's her name? Oh, I just thought of her. What was that actress's name? I can't remember what her name is. She did The White Witch in Narnia. That's like the only movie I can think of her being in. She did her Elizabeth movie that she did. Tilda Swinton, yes. Tilda Swinton in the Elizabeth movie. I think it was literally just called Elizabeth. That movie is not at all accurate to the period in terms of like styles, materials, anything like that. Silhouettes were always super exaggerated, but the thing is that it was very faithful to the drama of that era. It was faithful to the kind of emotional hierarchy of her lifetime. Like as you watch her clothing change across the movie, she starts to gain colors and styles and silhouettes that grow as her influence and power grows. As she goes from, you know, before she was queen to after she was queen, you see this drastic difference in her kind of path to power. And even though the styles are not necessarily historically accurate to what she wore, and we have a lot of paintings, so we know exactly what she wore, the fact that, you know, creative liberties were taken, but they were taken to be faithful to kind of the emotional drama that was happening. So that you had these crazy silhouettes, but they were more modern and a lot more unique in terms of like the craziness and the designs, but they were fantastic for the film because the film was a lot more about her emotional journey than it was about this actual historically accurate film. So that's like an example of a film that isn't historically accurate but does it really well, right? I didn't watch this movie. I sort of watched other people who are way more well versed in historical fashion than I am talk about it, but like the newest Little Women is an attempt at being historically accurate without being historically accurate, right? It has some kind of creative liberty when it comes to the colors and the materials that they were wearing, but it wasn't trying to be like inaccurate. It just kind of wasn't there. They kind of didn't commit to one or the other, and so characters wore kind of weird colors, and they wore clothing that was out of style or out of era, and like also didn't take into account that these characters were, you know, like if they were going to stick to the canon of the story, these characters should have all been wearing the same outfits, just passed down from sister to sister, because it's about 4 sisters, right? And so like in that time, because they weren't rich, they would have been passing down their clothes from sister to sister, so the costume should have been similar for each sister other than the oldest one, because she would have gotten first pick for materials and all that kind of stuff. Their silhouettes weren't accurate at all, and in fact they were out of date for the character in certain times and a little too modern for certain times, and they totally skip over one of the most beautiful turn of the century eras of dress, which I have no idea why they did, and really failed to use fashion to show time in the film, because time is a huge part. They time skip a lot in that film because it's about their lives. And fashion changes a lot from year to year, 5 years, 10 years within an era of fashion. At the time changed so much dramatically. And, you know, you had hoop skirts and crinolines, and then you had the kind of like S curve, you had all of these really interesting trains and all that kind of stuff. Like, that changed within the span of 5 to 10 years drastically. But the film didn't really honor that. It didn't use any of those things to help it tell its own story. It kind of just tried to be sort of faithful to the history, but kind of a creative liberty thing, and it didn't commit to either. I didn't watch that, but it was kind of a weird thing. When it comes to like okay, but you know what? I'm kind of into it though. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's kind of cool. Crossbows that look like guns is kind of cool. And I mean, this guy's costume is kind of weird, if I'm gonna be honest. It's a little, because, you know, they're wearing tactical vests as the gambeson on top of their armor. Their helmets have nose bridges to them, right? Like, no one in their right mind was gonna be like, yeah, look at this guy's haircut. He got it cut at like a barber shop down the street. I think it's kind of cool. I don't know. It's a tough sell. Like, what is something worth critiquing for its historical inaccuracies, and what is something that kind of succeeds because of its historical inaccuracies? That's the line you've got to kind of toe. Okay, wait, hold on. I will be right back for a second. I'm gonna go get water and also pet my cat. Okay. Peach is so mad at me because I haven't slept yet. Thank you. She's like, she's giving me the death stare. She's like, you should have been in bed hours ago. And you're not, which means I can't go to sleep, which means I'm grumpy at you for not letting me sleep. I must be grateful for her to always constantly be dealing with my shenanigans. Yeah, she sleeps in my room. She always does. She won't let me hold her, but our nightly routine is that, I mean, she always sleeps on my bed, but, when I go to bed, when I get onto my bed, she always comes running in, to hang out with me. Even when I take naps, like, as soon as I get into bed and I'm, like, putting the blanket up to my chin, I'll hear her do her little chirp, and she'll run in, she'll get onto her pillow that's like parallel to me, and then she'll sleep with me. It's been like our little thing that we do, even though she won't let me pick her up, she won't let me cuddle her for too much. I can't like hug her when I sleep, but she'll always sleep with me. Only in nights where she's really pissed at me that will she go and sleep in the living room. Peach is a cat. She is a little fat cat. Cats are good. Cats are great for homebodies. Dogs, you actually have to walk. Cats would prefer you not to look at them. Until they demand pets, and then why aren't you looking at them? Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Yasmin. I appreciate it. Hey, Jason. Well, I'm glad you can make it. Unfortunately, this is not going to be my regular time schedule since this is 5 a.m. for me. But hopefully, maybe in the future, you'll be able to catch me again. Good evening and good night to those who are leaving and to those who are just joining us. little bit intense, aren't they? Well, I'm probably gonna finish the rest of it later, because it is 5, so I should sleep and be prepared for streaming tomorrow. If you guys are here, that probably means you won't be able to make it to the actual normal stream around 7 p.m. Pacific, but if you can, sorry, today, it's in a couple hours later tonight. But if you're here, you probably can't make it. But regardless, I will be streaming again at 7 p.m. my normal time, Pacific Coast Standard Time. So if you can make it, hope you can. If you can't, don't worry about it. There'll probably be another day where I have an insomnia-riddled evening and want to draw again. But I'll probably end it here because it's late for me and I can kind of feel myself making less cool decisions. So I will finish this drawing some other day. I don't know if I'll finish it on stream, but I will finish it, I promise. Where I'll post that, hopefully in places that people will be able to see, unless I forget, in which case I might. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to anyone who's been here since the beginning of this like surprise stream and listened to me ramble about the past couple months. Even if you joined later, I still really appreciate that you stuck around and that you hung out with me, because it's always nice being able to talk with people when I'm working. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. I love you all so much, especially, if it's your first time, I really appreciate you dropping by. Yeah, thank you guys so much. But yeah, I'll be streaming later today. If you can make it, please try, please do. I'd love to say hi again. If not, don't worry about it. I'll see you next time. I'll be streaming again next week anyway. So, I love you all so much. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. Stay healthy. If you are going into your last day of the week, or if you're going into the weekend, I hope you have an amazing next couple days, if not just a peaceful next couple days. And yeah, love you all so much. And I'll catch you all later.